Good evening. I'd like to call the Special Services Committee meeting to order at 6:27 p.m. Item 1 on our agenda is the approval of the October 19th, 2023 Special Services minutes.
Second.
There being a motion and a second, is there discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2 is our enrollment update. Dr. Bryant.
Yes, as in previous months, we do have the enrollment update for you. We continue to monitor class sizes, and as students are moving in and out, we take that into account as we're making decisions about whether or not a particular class is full. So I have no other real updates there.
Any questions or comments regarding enrollment?
Thank you. I was just curious, how did the transition from Nancy Loud to the rest of the district go?
Most of those students and teachers are at Chamberlain, so they're doing well, and Mrs. Lancy did a really nice job at their open house. I don't know if you've heard about this, but she created little gifts for the Nancy Loud students with sort of a welcome into Chamberlain, and I think she's tried really hard to help both students and staff of both of those buildings start to create their new community. So,
Great.
Any other questions or comments? All right, next item is the attendance update. Dr. Bryant?
So I think in previous years, maybe you've seen attendance updates like this. This is the first one this year, but we have it by month here, I believe. So if you have any questions, let me know.
Questions or comments?
Is the other years in here, so we have?
No.
So I think in the past, we've had the last 2 or 3 years to compare the data. So, I mean, it'd be nice to be able to look at where we are versus where we were before to see what our absences are at, if possible.
Okay, sure.
Any other questions or comments regarding attendance?
No, just everything good.
Congratulations to the freshmen at Bud Carlson, they have 100% attendance.
Scroll down towards all the grades.
How do they do that?
Great.
Are we able to get, just to compare how we're doing compared to like a district like Dover? Yeah, are we able to get like theirs just to make sure that we're, because looking at the percentage, it doesn't look too bad.
I can check. If not, I wonder if I can get like a state.
Yeah, just make sure we're.
I can see what I can
doing
find.
we can do to make sure kids are getting into school.
Yeah, sure.
All right, any other questions or comments regarding attendance? All right, there being none, item 4, bus data. Dr. Bryant.
And same buses are running, and we're keeping an eye on those numbers as well.
Great. Any questions on bus data? All right. Next item is item 5, ENSO counseling group proposal.
This is a proposal from an intern from Plymouth State, I believe, who would be working with the school counselor at School Street. So we have all the information, including, I think, a letter that would go home to families to talk about the kind of services that this intern could provide. There would be permission form that a parent would need to fill out and that kind of thing.
assume you're looking for approval to use this?
Did you have a question?
I was gonna make the same question.
All right. Is there a motion to
Oh,
approve?
I have a question. Yep. Are they working under somebody, so somebody is supervising them?
Yeah, somebody is supervising them, although I believe they could potentially meet with a student without the supervisor present.
And the parent would
And the
know
parent would know that.
would specifically know that ahead of time?
I think it's in the permission.
Dr. Ryan, so we're here for.
Yeah, we're here.
Take an answer, come on up.
Okay.
Join us.
Sure.
It's great to see you.
Yeah, so I'm Kathy Poitras. I'm actually currently school counselor at Maple Street, and I've been at McClellan for the last, 5 years. And so I am in the Plymouth State Clinical Mental Health Counseling Program. I'm doing my internship. This is Scott Wilson, and he is the founder and owner of Enso Counseling Group, and he's my supervisor. So yeah, so the proposal would be for me to go in to School Street, do some clinical, school-based clinical mental health counseling. He would not be there for the most part, but he and I collaborate. I have a weekly supervision with him, and yeah, so that's kind of how that works. But if you have any other questions, feel free to, yeah.
Thanks. So you work for our district right now?
I work for the school district part-time, so the days in which that I'm proposing to go into School Street are days that I am not employed for the district. So it's separate.
Okay, and then, okay.
And I'm looking at the sign-off form, and it says, by signing this form, I agree for my counseling sessions to be recorded and used for supervisory and educational purposes. So the parent would sign off on that if they agree to it.
Yeah, so are you ever gonna be in our school? I'm sorry, I forgot your name. So are you ever coming into our school, or are you just are you just having meetings with her outside of the building?
I have meetings with her outside of the building.
Okay, so even to start off with, nobody's gonna be observing you with students? So are you at the point where you're ready to do work on your own, and this is just like the end of your?
Yeah, so I've been doing my practicum since August. And so I have been working with clients, again, without like a supervisor observing. And that's why, they ask to have it be recorded. And so then, I can look at that, talk about it, and that type of thing. So yes, I am at the place in my practicum and internship where I can do that independently with the supervision of him outside of that time.
Can I ask another question? Sorry. If you're recording it, for you, if the parent wants the recording as well, are you willing to give that up to the parent?
That's not something that's typically done in any master's program. The program it's due to the governing body of the master's programs, they require the recording to have happen, but we don't provide that with the parents for a number of reasons. One of them being just the legalities, depending on age, about what we can share with parents. In the state of New Hampshire, after age 12, we can't share any information legally about substance use or sexual activity, so we wouldn't be able to share it in that case.
Will the school district be able to do copies of it if you're in their school?
No. No, this is a service outside of that. The only thing that we're asking the school to do is to provide the space. We take care of all of the administrative stuff, we take care of all the clinical work, we take care of all the liability, all of that.
So if there was any legal issues, it wouldn't be the school that's responsible, it would be?
That's correct.
Is there a motion to accept?
Okay, well, how come it's only gonna be at School Street?
Sure, because my practicum and internship is part-time. So I work part-time, so I only have 2 days. And so really, it's one of those things where it's around time. And so when Scott and I were talking, and I just, I know the district, I know the schools, and I know that School Street has one counselor. Many of the other districts or other schools have more than that. And I know that that's like an anchor to their Title I this year is to support the mental health needs of the students there. So it was really kind of that reason.
Okay, Mr. Boyer.
I'm not seeing in the memorandum of the MOU a hold harmless agreement or anything protecting us on that liability or documenting that. Is that in here? And I'm not seeing item 7. Thank you. I just couldn't find it. Thank you.
I move to accept the agreement as proposed.
Is there a second?
Second.
There being a motion and a second, is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We need more of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, Kathy.
Thank you.
All right, next item is our 5-year plan. Taking a look at our items. So our top items. So we're going to look at the growth in the city. We're going to review that when we have the updated GIS map from them. They're still working on that. So we were going to do it this month, but we're waiting on them to update, so hopefully next month. All right, and then that's it for 5-year plan. Next is public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to address the committee? Okay, there being none, I'll close public comment. Next is other.
No.
Not, it's a
no,
separate, it's.
Oh.
Right on that.
All right, just checking.
Is there anything under other?
I think this is,
That
I have
would
some
be under Huh?
discipline data
Yes.
that you requested. So I'm sorry I didn't have it in your packets previously, but I do have some discipline data to share with you. Both number of safe schools reports that came in for each school starting in August. I did a cutoff date of October 31st for these reports, just so you are aware of that. And then some overall discipline numbers for elementary, middle, and high. And
Is this also the
what's that?
Is this also the incident report? Where when, like, a staff member gets hit and there's an incident that needs to be done? Just for next meeting? No problem. I know this is a lot of data I asked for this
Sorry,
one
Shane,
meeting.
I
No,
thought
no, of course.
I had
No,
it.
I know this is a lot.
But this is interesting too. I'll make sure I have that, yeah. And then I did just do the top 3 discipline referral categories for elementary, middle, and high, and I compared last year to this year just so you can see how we're doing. I know the buildings worked with their teams to look at this data as well, but this is kind of a overall view.
As a follow-up.
Kind of was just asked, but we used to have discipline committee or discipline hearings and whatnot. Just as a, with some of these things, it seems like it should be a discipline committee issue. Where are we at with that?
The RSA changed, so we no longer have a discipline committee. The hearing body is the full board.
So it's handled at the administration
It
level?
is, yes.
And then if it's egregious enough, it comes to us, or?
It's held at the building level, and then at a certain level, it comes to me, to my office, and then I believe after that would come to the board. Yeah.
But just the severity or the egregiousness of whatever the offense is what dictates now.
Yeah.
Right?
So I know the law changed, but I don't think we had to get rid of our discipline committee, and I think it actually functioned very well. Do you know if, I know you probably don't know, is there a way that you can look and see if other districts with the law change, if they still have a discipline committee? I think it would be worthwhile to at least have the conversation about having it back, because I think when the school board is involved in the discipline issues, I would say 99% of the time, we always supported the school anyway, but I think when you're having that conversation and you're seeing a representation of your board, I think it adds a little more. So I think it should be, I don't know, where did that go? Did that go to the
I would
full board?
send it to
It
the
comes to the
attorney
full board now.
to ask.
If there's a-
Yeah.
I'm saying to bring back the committee.
Well, in our policy, the committee's still there.
Yeah, it's in our policy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you send that to the attorney to see why, what the reason in the RSA was, what changed?
Yep.
If it was the number of days of suspension
Oh,
or
that's good, yeah.
just so we have the background. Because I remember we were given the reason, it was explained by Dr. McDonald why we no longer were having a discipline committee moving forward in that July 2021 timeframe, or July 20, yeah.
I think it was the law
2021.
change that kids couldn't be out of school suspension. So I think it was, right, but I think
Yeah.
if we could get an update on that, that would be, I agree, that would be great. And again, to find out if other districts still have it, if it's worthwhile.
Shane?
Well, with Dr. Mahoney here, I do have a question with, I see it a lot of elementary, body, physical contact. What is a disciplinary measure for when a student hits another student?
She would know hers are all zeros.
No. I know when I was in school, if you put your hands on a student, you're out of school. There was no question, that's what happened, you were gone.
We have obviously we utilize the graduated sanctions, so, right, interventions, again, you look at the grade level, the interventions that are being used, you know, our first and foremost is the educational piece, right, because we want to keep kids in school, but we also need to keep kids safe.
Right.
So, really, it's a case by case, so there's not putting a blanket statement of a one-size-fits-all approach is really difficult because there's just so many variables to a disciplinary action. But, you know, if the case is severe enough, it could result in immediate out-of-school suspension. Again, grade level, depends on the grade level, depends on the situation, the severity of it, and the previous interventions that have been used.
Just my frustration right now is just, obviously, we hear about how behaviors are in the school, and we're not thinking about the students right now that are behaving in the class and want to learn. We seem to just want to cater, no, I'm not going to say maybe cater, but we are letting this happen and not thinking about the kids that want to learn. That's my frustration right now, is these students that are constantly causing problems are continuing to be allowed to cause problems. And I think we need to figure something out, do something better in our schools to start thinking about the kids that want to learn.
Ms. Grassi?
Yeah, I had a call from a dad this week who wanted us to look at our bullying policy, which is probably time that we review it. It hasn't been reviewed since 2014. Because a lot of what is happening in the classrooms, even though our bullying policy is mostly aimed at kids picking on other kids, the definition of what's happening in the classroom when there's a kid out of control, he's not targeting any one kid in the classroom, but the effect is the same. And he was wondering why a parent couldn't use our bullying policy for this kind of, his example was his daughter's in, I think it's a daughter, he didn't say, his child's in 4th grade. There were 3 incidents 3 days ago where the ERT team, emergency response team, had to come to remove the child from the classroom. There were 3 of those 3 days ago. 2 days ago there were 3 more, and today there were 2. So that's a 4th grade classroom that's had 8 incidences of a child having to be removed from the classroom. It's upsetting for everybody. And it does, you know, our definition in our bullying policy, it covers those things, even though these children are not bullying another child or an adult. They're sort of bullying the classroom is what they're doing. So he wanted us to take a look at our policy and update it with what's happening today, the type of behaviors that are happening.
I think, and I thank Shane for asking for this information, because when you're looking at the data, 19 drug and alcohol offenses. I mean, if you have 19 already from August 2023 to October 20, like, that's an issue that I feel like we need to look into addressing.
Does that include, no, I'm sorry, does that include vapes? I'm sorry.
If they are,
Not a drug or an
If it's just
alcohol.
tobacco.
No.
I just wanna make sure they're not putting that in the right category. If it's a vape, that's not just tobacco.
it might be a tobacco, I'll get clarification on that.
Well, I looked on here though, and there is one that says vaping or e-cigarettes, and that would be 26. So it doesn't look like that data would
Yeah,
align.
correct, yeah.
So I just wanted to, I did look at that, so it doesn't look like it is. But 8 firearm or other weapons, this board should be notified if there's any kind of weapon coming into a building, because if you have 8, and by the way, half of that 8 is at the middle school, it's not even the high school. This board should be, you know, even if it's non-public, to say, we just want you to know there was some kind of, we don't know what it is looking at this, I'm assuming they're not firearms, I'm assuming there's some kind of weapons. But again, you have kids that are hunting, but this board should be aware of like what's coming into those schools. And the other one is, and again, out of those firearms and weapons, it's not at the high school, it's at the middle school. So I think that needs to be looked at. And then the other one is 16 assaults and threatening. And again, out of those 16, the biggest amount of assaults and threatening are at the middle school. So it looks like we need to find out what's going on with some of that data. So I mean, I don't know if we got
It's called middle school.
the building administrators in here, you know what I mean? Like, and it's not to ask them what's going on, it's to say, how do we support you? You can't stop a principal from having somebody bring drugs and alcohol. How do we prevent that? And then what are we doing to support that? Are those kids going to some kind of rehab, or they doing, you know what I mean? Like, we need to know what's going on, because kids can't learn, like Ann Grazzi said, you can't learn if you're constantly being pulled out of class. But then we also know that there's special ed involved, and unfortunately we're short periods, so that, you know, add that into the mix, and it's really messed up. But, I mean, firearms are weapons. This board is not aware. That's a sad, sad problem.
I circled those very same things.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. As far as the drug and alcohol offenses, I mean, this may be my cynicism a little bit, but I was thinking that that's it, only 19.
Yeah.
That could be one party.
Yeah.
But it can be repeated offenses, and I know that the new law on student discipline says you can't hold a kid accountable for accumulated offenses. So each event is a separate event. So if they're suspended for 5 days for each one, you can't suspend them longer for a second offense and a third offense. So,
Yeah.
but as far as the firearms, that is very alarming. And what is more alarming to me is that there were 2 in the elementary schools.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, Matt?
And I agree in the severity, but I just want to clarify so that way the public watching is not like, oh my lord, there's guns in the schools.
No fire.
Firearm or other
Right.
weapon, so
Which
this could be a
a
nail
small
clipper,
number,
right?
exactly,
Okay,
yeah.
just want,
Yeah.
not that I'm saying that that's that level, low level or
Yeah.
high level, but there's a wide range, right?
Yep.
Okay, just want to make sure the public doesn't freak out on this. That's all.
Sandy?
You know, would the drug or alcohol things refer to also at a football game? Could that be, would
It
those
could
kids
be.
be? So, could be after hours thing, not necessarily in a classroom.
And the same with assaults too.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the
Pretty
thing
hard
to
to
remember is,
remember.
if there are small things, I think the board should know about it, right?
I'm saying
Because
that, yeah.
all it takes is one, and again, I don't think there's any firearms, so I'm assuming we can let the public know that it was weapons, but, I mean, I think if the board were made aware that, hey, it was a fingernail polish, or I think a few years ago, we had somebody with a razor to shave their legs, they were going to a friend's house, those would be considered weapons, but I think it'd be good for the board to be able to know, because now that this is public, you're right, we're gonna be getting phone calls saying, what the heck is going on, and I think we need to be aware of what's going on in our buildings. And I don't think it's this severity, I do think it's probably smaller things, but I think when you put it under firearms and weapons, the board needs to know what those weapons are.
Can I speak to a couple
Yes.
of those things? Just to clarify a couple of things, I pulled the language right from our Safe Schools report, which is the only reason why that word firearms is on there, just so you do know, and you're absolutely right that I think our administrative team does a really good job of responding, so whether it is a fingernail clipper or something bigger, they're on it. And so kudos to them really for getting those things and reporting them. When there's a Safe Schools report that comes to the superintendent's office as well, I'm notified as well. So they're doing a really good job of that. I really appreciated your comment about figuring out where the need is so that we can support better. It's kind of a new reality in schools, and I do think that I'm really impressed by the administrative team that's working in the buildings. I want to just say that, and that there are some laws that we're bound by, and but despite that, trying to figure out how we can support all of our learners, support the kids who are maybe not struggling as much, as well as those who are in an effective way. I think the more that we can collaborate, I would appreciate that, and I know that our administrative team would as well, so thank you for having this conversation.
I do think kind of what Matt Pappas had said, so if you have one student have come in the building 5 different times, that, that 19 really goes down to like 14. And again, I want to make sure it's clear, like you just said, it is about how we support the staff and the students on having a good education, because if we don't support them and then they stop reporting it, we're not going to have that good data. So we hire some really good administrators, we hire some really good teachers, we hire, our staff is top notch. So now it's up to us to say, how do we support them? And I think just having that conversation is really, really important, because we know what we do great, now we have to fix what's not great, and we can only do that by having those conversations.
Shane?
Can you bring the next meeting, the RSA would change discipline in the school?
Sure.
Also just bring where it's more difficult for our admin to suspend students out of school, just so we get a better understanding. Because honestly, when I'm looking at inappropriate physical contact for an elementary school 91 times, I'm looking that should be 91 out of school suspension.
And that could just be, again, the level of severity, that's a really broad umbrella as well.
No,
So
I
it may
understand
be a push, or it could be something
Well,
more.
unfortunately, if you push another student, you should be going home. That's just my mind. I don't think you should be in school because you are endangering the safety of the other students. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I can bring that law so we can take a look at
Okay,
that.
thank you.
And I just want to acknowledge the hard work that our admin and staff have been doing around MTSS behavior. I know that they've been putting a lot of time and energy into those levels of intervention, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 interventions, and they are doing a lot to try to accommodate all learners and address the issues within the classroom and do whatever they can to keep everyone in the room. So I know they've been putting a lot of work into that, and I thank them for those efforts.
That's great, but we're left with kids and parents that aren't disrupting classrooms, that don't understand what's happening, that the same kids, these 8 kids that have been removed from a 4th grade classroom are back in the classroom tomorrow. What's actually being done for those kids, those 8 kids? And everyone should understand what the process is, because it seems like, and I've heard Shane say it before, it seems like nothing is happening. They're just allowed to go back into the classroom, which leaves the rest of the class very confused as to how your behavior is supposed to be in school. And I think we're overwhelmed in a lot of our classrooms. This parent we had a long conversation today about how short-staffed we are in classrooms with young children, and how difficult it is to get a handle on this, and the mental health. This is unlike, I looked at our policy, bullying policy, not reviewed since 2014, written for a very different time and very different behaviors than we're seeing now. And I'm reminded that the behaviors, Ms. Camus said last meeting, that behaviors are communication. And we're not learning the language, we're not picking up on what the communication is here, and how we help fix this. Because I'm sure these children are not only causing havoc in school, they're causing havoc wherever they are. It's not going to stop at 3 o'clock. So they're out in the community affecting all of us at some point.
Pretty much on top of what Ann said, I think we gotta dig into it more, we gotta dig into the law, but we need to start thinking about the students that wanna learn. Right now, I understand we wanna keep everybody in the classroom, but unfortunately, we can't. You're putting other students at their safety at risk, and I think we're not thinking about them. So unfortunately, if that means you've gotta go home and the parents needs to be, it's gonna be inconvenient for them, well, that's sometimes what teaches them, but I think this needs to be really looked into.
Sounding like a policeman.
I would like to, sorry, okay. I would like to see, so we have to give faith, right? And again, I'm kind of looking at you, Dr. Mahoney, because you're the only admin here, so I apologize. So we have to have faith. We realize that some kids don't function well in school, or they're affecting other people's education. I think what I'd like to hear is maybe from an admin. So like somebody from me says, well, I mean, we have a really good technology place where we have Google Classroom, and if a kid's gonna act up and they need to get FAVE, how do we not provide it where they're not in the building, right? And I know there's a lot of things that go along with that, but I'd like to see maybe the admins, and again, I know I'm kind of throwing you out, like what other options are there? So we have a student that's kind of, and I don't need you to answer it now because I know, yeah.
You're good.
So we have a student, like Ann had said, where the entire classroom's going out. Instead, how do we offer that child supports? Do we offer them supports in another room? Do we offer these kids maybe, and maybe it's not special ed, which of course my head goes to special ed, maybe it's an anxiety or whatever. What, you know what I mean? Like, how do we brainstorm? We have basically one-to-one technology. We have a really good educational system. What, you know what I mean? Like, how do we fix that issue where kids don't necessarily have to be in the building but are getting paid?
There's so much to unpack there.
I know.
No, it's okay. But this is an important conversation,
Right.
right? So, and the reality is the behavior is not going anywhere.
Right.
And whether, I mean, Dr. Bryan and I have talked about this, whether we like to acknowledge it or not, COVID-19 had a big impact on the socialization of young students. So if you think about we've had to get creative and we've had to evolve our systems. So over the past couple of years, we've done just that. Now, again, for me, it's very hard. I have a very small school, space-wise, physically speaking, right? So more often than not, that alternative space is with me. And I can say for other schools, like other larger schools and medium-sized schools who don't have assistant principals, those alternative spaces are with the principals. So when we're getting creative, the principals, we're working with these kids. And so the teachers can teach. So when I say it takes a village, it takes a village. So all of us are providing alternative spaces. So the kids who are not disruptive can learn, and those who are having a really hard time communicating effectively and communicating through their behavior, we are taking them and trying to re-regulate them, whether it be through the zones of regulation, whether it be through MTSSB, whether it be through the school counseling, whether it be through Mrs. Poitras. I mean, what she's doing, I think, is, quite frankly, if I may, I'm sorry, but fantastic. The reality is that there's not enough mental health professionals available to schools. And so, honestly, that's kind of where it needs to start, is with that being pushed more into.
Can I reply? And by the way, I've seen the school, I've seen the hallway, I jumped the little things. By the way, I was winded by the end. So, I think you have a video of it. So, I think all that's great, but I'm saying, have we looked at the remote option enough? Because when a child goes into, and again, you're doing everything you can. You're using your whole bag of superpowers, and I think that you're doing everything you can. But when a child comes into you to dysregulate, which is where they need to be, you're now affected, because then you can't do your job if there's an emergency. That child's not really getting an education, which I don't think they're in the mind space to get it, but still, that child's technically not getting an education. Is there a way to look at it and say, would that child benefit from having like a remote option to still be able to get that FAPE? and again, you have a lot of things, you can't, special ed, all these other things, but like when Shane said that there's a child that's disrupting it when you've gotten rid of all the other aspects, is there a remote option? I guess is my question, and I don't think we have the answer tonight, but I think that's something we really should look into, because we do have one-to-one technology. Most people have Wi-Fi.
And we do have, I mean, even if the students are needing to, once they're regulated, I'll have the work brought down where they can access that, whether it be Amplify for intervention. And I know, I mean, I'm fortunate enough where I know my students at my school, as I'm small enough, I can say, all right, I know you need to work on this, let's work on this together. I mean, at the end of the day, my job is to run a school, but at the end of the day, my job is to take care of these kids.
Right.
And so taking care of these kids is my primary focus, and if that means I need to spend time with them, then so be it, because that's, to me, that's what's right. But, I think the remote question, that's a bigger discussion than I can respond to.
We've been saying COVID is the problem, and it was remote. That giving the kid more trauma of what traumatized him, I don't think is a solution.
Not for everybody, I'm not saying it's everybody.
But
I'm
they're
just
saying that that's where a lot of these behaviors are coming from, because we went remote for so long.
Not everybody. Thank you, Dr. Mahoney, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I really appreciate your insight.
No, you're.
It's those conversations that I think we need more.
So, and I kind of said this when the MTSS started coming in, right? It's going to be taxing our already overtaxed staff, because now we need to take that student or students. We assume one student in one class. Middle school is probably multiple students at a time, right? And put them in another room or somewhere else supervised, and do we, it's almost like we're building another classroom throughout the day of 1, 2, 3, however many students are disrupting other classes. The cynical side of me says the remote option is good, but you know what? Kid says, well, you know what? I get to go home and do this on the computer if I act out. Well, you know what? I don't know. I think getting to the root of the problems and then getting the parent involved.
Correct.
And we need to get the parents involved sooner, and start holding the kids accountable as well as the parents accountable to, the behaviors in school need to be whatever. Fake is, and I get it, but at the end of the day, we can't necessarily, we can't.
It's a law.
Well, you know what? There's a lot of laws, but at the end of the day, we've got 4,000 students, and if 100 of them can't adjust to the rules, then there are other options or whatnot that have to be looked at. I don't know. I mean, I'm not totally discrediting a remote option. I just think that, again, the cynical side of me says, oh, well, I don't have to go to school if I act out. I'll get to do it on the computer.
Which is why I think that discussion should happen.
Shane says.
See, I understand we have faith, but I think the safety of the students that want to be there to learn is more of a priority. And it needs to be more of a priority moving forward. I'm not saying remote's not an option. I think we need to get the parents involved, and when you suspend them out of school, it's going to be an inconvenience for them, and that's how you get them involved, because now they got to find a babysitter or something because they're going to miss work. So this is the stuff that needs to start happening.
Okay. I agree with most of what you said, but I'm just saying, like, I think we need to look at a remote option and start having that discussion, because I think there's kids that don't want to be in school that get really good grades that could benefit from having like an anxiety or whatever. And then I think there's kids that are taking away from other people's education. Now, do I think the kid that says, I want to act up and go home deserves to have that option? No, I think we would identify those because I think we have really good admin that could say, yeah, this kid just wants to go home. But I just think without having that discussion, and it's a start tonight to say, how would that look? How many kids could we, kind of start? We start so many projects that we're like, hey, we're going to start this reading thing, or we're going to start with a small group and see how it goes. I think that's something we could look into. But I think a lot of kids need to be in school, like Ann had said, but I think some kids could benefit from not being in. So I think it's not everybody, but I don't think we have to classify everybody either.
All right.
Sorry, thank you.
Yep. Is that it on this topic for now? All right, next, or do we have anything else under other, Dr. Wright? All right, next item is our non-public under RSA 91A3 2C. We can have a roll call, please. All right, we are back in public session. Mr. Pappas?
I move we accept the parents' request that was presented to us. No problem.
Second.
There being a motion and a second, discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
There being a motion and a second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.